The USA Today cover article today features this melodramatic article about this sheriff in a border county in Arizona, also a member of some association of border sheriffs of these predominantly Hispanic counties along the southern border. The whole article is basically an emotional appeal to sort of guilt America at large into continuing to permit the invasion of its country and the cultural adulteration into a less and less of a nation and more of an artificial multicultural state held together by an increasingly authoritarian government. The article is full of unfounded hysterics and appeals to emotion, but the thing I actually find insightful, not according to the intention of either this sheriff or the USA Today, of course, is a statement he makes in here. I mean, in addition to just generally making sympathetic arguments and trying to say it's not practical and to discourage people from trying to, the American people from trying to, actually regulate the borders of their nation. In response to his misunderstanding of some comments that Trump made during the campaign about, some of these illegal immigrant Mexicans being rapists and murderers, he says, he insulted my people. I took it personally. This just goes to show the problem with multiculturalism. A nation is only as well as its people have solidarity and have a perceived common interest. What you have here is this man who is actually a naturalized citizen and who was apparently an illegal immigrant originally. It's not exactly clear as that, doesn't state that clearly, but anyway, he's an immigrant, a naturalized citizen, and yet throughout this article he's arguing for there to continue to not be a distinction between the United States and Mexico, or not to be a border. Now, I do understand that this region was always somewhat this way, when this territory was acquired in war. It's not like it became predominantly Hispanic in the last few decades from people swimming across the Rio Grande or whatever, but that's just the nature of many countries around the world along the border regions. And but nevertheless, it's not good for a nation overall to be divided like this. Throughout this article, this man continues to argue for this continued invasion without apparently realizing that it is not in the interests of his children, if he has any children. There's billions and billions of people in this world with a standard of living below that of even Mexico. You can go to numbersusa.com for some presentations and more precise numbers. But the vast majority of the population of this planet would come here if they could and swamp this nation and completely destroying it economically and ecologically to where it would be no kind of place anyone would want to live. Just like people in a lifeboat may happen to be a somewhat random collection of strangers who happen to climb aboard. Once that lifeboat is full, they need to paddle away from the drowning throngs. Otherwise, the lifeboat is just going to be swamped and upset, and everyone is going to drown. I challenge this gentleman and whatever type of immigrants or non-white people that are in this country that do not naturally identify with the greater nation at large, to consider what is in the best interest of their offspring. And that is to have our borders under control and to severely dial back immigration, both legal and illegal, so that we can absorb and assimilate, so that we can become more one nation with one sense of solidarity and common interest. And so we can do other things as well, like, balance out the labor market so that there isn't such a great disparity of income and wealth in this country anymore. Admittedly, nations are not always based on, purely along ethnic lines. There's something somewhat arbitrary in what ends up forming a nation. A lot of random historical circumstance that kind of throws different groups of people together until they become eventually more or less one people. And we are far from that at this point in American history. And ultimately, as a pragmatic affair, I suggest that everyone who's here legally, that is, of whatever origin or ethnicity, does the right thing for their children and all of our children, and supports regaining control of our borders